All right, I will get us started today. Thank you for joining us. You are attending the Get Legit Education Series. Our session today is on cannabis packaging and labeling regulations with the California Department of Public Health's Manufactured Cannabis branch. Before we get started today, I want to, hello everybody, I want to make a few introductions. My name is Maggie. You are here with the Nevada County Cannabis Alliance. For those of you who do not know, we are a nonprofit trade association representing the local cannabis community here in Nevada County. We have a threefold mission of educate, advocate, connect. We provide year-round education on permitting and compliance, as well as business development skills and regenerative farming practices. We are 12 months out of the year doing policy advocacy work, both on a local level as well as on the state level. And we offer lots of opportunities to our members for connection throughout the supply chain here locally, as well as on a statewide level. I want to give a great thank you to a few of our allied industry business sponsors for making this series possible. Thank you to Vital Garden Supply, Ag Natural, Grow Generation, Gold Mountain Distribution, Elevation 2477, Four Seasons Garden Supply, Rolling Hills Bookkeeping, SC Labs, Humboldt Seed Company, Hometown Hydroponics, Foresters Co-op, Moreland Consulting. Thank you very much. I also just want to let everybody know that here at the Alliance, all of our Get Legit education sessions, like today's, are recorded and available. So if you or somebody you know are not able to make it to this presentation or any of our previous ones, let us know. We have those available for you to continue educating yourself with. We also offer monthly industry affair calls and that span all sorts of topics throughout the industry. In June, we have one coming up on the OCAL, Organic Equivalence Program for cannabis, which is very exciting and coming down the pipeline for cannabis cultivation. We also have one on cannabis marketing coming up on June 23rd. July, we have a number of industry affairs calls that will be all about water, which is a very hot topic. And so I highly recommend people tune in and stay engaged in those. We also offer a buddy program, which has been wonderfully successful, that is linking up new members to fully licensed farmers to really provide some extra support going through the permitting process, to do a really initial land assessment with folks. And so there are lots of opportunities. There is a ton of support and resources available for folks. Don't feel like you are going through any of these processes alone. Reach out. We are available on social media, via email. Connect with us here at the Alliance. We are here to help. And we want to see everybody succeed. So a few things before we get started today, just on the format of today's webinar. There is the chat feature. There is also the Q&A feature. Please feel free to type in questions throughout the presentation. As questions come up for you, type them in so we can get to them when the topic's hot. And we'll make sure by the end of the session that everybody gets their questions answered. And with that, I would like to introduce our presenter today, Fiona Matson, who is an environmental scientist and as well as a Northern California inspector for the Inspection and Compliance Unit of the Manufactured Cannabis Safety Branch of the California Department of Public Health. That is a mouthful, Fiona. But Fiona, we are so happy to have you here. I know that our local businesses in Nevada City are all familiar with you already, and you have been just a wealth of information and knowledge, and we are very excited. For those of you who don't know, and I know Fiona will get into this, the California Department of Public Health is who oversees packaging and labeling of cannabis products. as well as for any manufacturing companies. But Fiona, thank you so much for joining us today, and we are all very excited to have you with us.
Thank you, Maggie, for having me. I'm very excited to present to the Alliance. So let me get my little presentation set up for you all. Hopefully we can, okay. Can we see it all good?
That looks great.
Yeah, you just see the slide, right?
I can see your slide and then the next slide on the side, which is
Hold
fine.
on, let me figure that out real quick, because it shouldn't be doing that. Give me a second. Let's see. I thought I got this right earlier. There we go. Let me see. Is that better?
It's still the outline and then the next slide on the side.
Darn it. Darn it, darn it, darn it. Hold on.
Which I think would work. But...
Sharing. And let's try that again. Okay. There we go.
Perfect.
Okay. Let me go back to the first slide then. Okay, technical problem solved. Like Maggie said, my name is Fiona. I am an environmental scientist for the Manufactured Cannabis Safety Branch with the Department of Public Health. You probably have seen me and my partner Matt Kosh around if you're a manufacturer licensee in Nevada City. We are your inspectors. Yeah, and so we oversee all packaging and labeling for cannabis products, non-manufactured and manufactured. So I'm going to get into a little bit of what that entails. So first, there are the packaging and labeling requirements. So this is a nice little outline of what we're going to go through in this presentation. Feel free to jump in and ask questions, as Maggie said, throughout. But we're going to touch on the packaging requirements first, product classification, going into the different types of labeling, universal symbol, the government warnings, labeling restrictions, as well as common violations we see throughout the industry, and finishing off with some licensee resources and guidance documents that are very helpful. So kicking this off, we've got the packaging requirements for all cannabis products. We'll get into a little bit of the differences here. So you've got your tamper evidence seal. If the product has multiple uses, you're going to want to have it resealable, have the ability to have it resealable. For edibles specifically, it has to be in an opaque, the product has to be in an opaque packaging, so you can't see the edible. And of course, the package also has to be child resistant. And so all packaging, especially for manufactured products specifically, must be packed and labeled before being released to distribution and be in its final and finished form. All packaging, the product must be protected from potential contamination. And these requirements can be fulfilled using a variety of different layering methods for the product specifically that you're trying to package. Going back to the edible piece, edibles can be not only in opaque packaging, but if we're talking about a liquid, amber bottles are considered opaque for the purposes of this. And so here are some examples of what tamper evident means. Basically, we want to ensure that the customer is getting a sealed product. So if there's a tab or anything like that, or if it rips or pops open, we want to have that ability to figure out if the product's been tampered with. And then on the right hand side, you have resealable options, and this is for if the product has multiple uses. We're going into some child-resistant packaging right now. So when we talk about child-resistant packaging, it's meant for children under the age of 5. They can't get into it. That's kind of the goal we're trying to meet with that. And there's a variety of methods on the market, and I've definitely seen some creativity from the manufacturers of meeting those requirements. And when we're talking about meeting those requirements, they have to comply with the Poison Prevention Act of 1970, and that's administered by the Consumer Product Safety Commission. And so with that being said, there's a lot of information on their website, as well as we have a guidance document that I'll show at the end, a link to. And I'll provide those links as well to Maggie to disperse to the Alliance. That will get you on the right track if you are having issues with child resistance or getting your product. So some general labeling requirements here before we get into more product specific stuff. The primary panel, I'm going to say this probably a lot throughout this presentation, is 3 main requirements. You have your product identity, universal symbol, and your customary and metric. And that is for non-manufactured products, flower, pre-rolls, and manufactured goods. There is one additional requirement with edibles for that primary panel, and it's the words cannabis infused, but we can touch on that a little bit more later. But I really, really want to drive home those 3 components, and I'll be saying that a lot throughout this presentation. It's something I still see the industry struggling with, is those 3 pieces on the face of the product. The information panel is any other part of the packaging besides the primary panel. And so there's a variety of requirements we'll go through for both flower and pre-rolls and for manufactured products. And then supplemental labeling is for manufactured products only, and we'll dive a little bit deeper into that. And it's when the product when the product maybe is too small and you need a hanging tag or things like that to capture all the required information. And so now we're looking at the primary panel. And like I said earlier, there's going to be those 3 requirements that I'm going to keep driving home. And so this is what we're looking at. So if you have a product and you want to meet those requirements of making sure the product has the identity, the universal symbol, and the net weight, of course, I highly recommend getting 3 of your products and lining the same product and lining them up next to each other. And if you can see all 3 of those requirements, then you're meeting what we require. We want it to be visible to the consumer, and the size and location, we understand, varies depending on the packaging. So that's something to keep in mind. Next, we're going to dive into some product classifications first before we jump into the requirements of the primary panel for flower and flower products. So when we're saying non-manufactured goods, we're talking about packaged flower and flower only pre-rolls. We're not talking about infused. Infused is separate and falls in the manufacturing category. And so when we talk about manufactured products, baked goods, chocolates, different infused beverages perhaps, then you've also got your concentrates, your tinctures, your dabbable concentrates, your vape cartridges. And so just to kind of get everyone thinking when we say non-manufactured versus manufactured throughout the presentation, and knowing the differences between those 2. Lots of different products on the market, that is for sure, with more always coming out. So looking at the primary panel for flower requirements. So now we're going to only focus on flower and flower only pre-rolls right now. Like I said, driving home that point, the identity of the product, flower or pre-roll. Some people say non-infused pre-roll, make it really clear to the consumer what they're getting. Universal symbol and the net weight in both metric and US customary. So these are the three things we're going to want to see on your flower and flower only pre-rolls. And I'm going to dive a little bit more deeper later on to the requirements of the universal symbol, because there are specific requirements surrounding that. So for the informational panel requirement, there's flower and flower only pre-rolls. We've got, these are the requirements for that informational panel, which if you so choose can also be fulfilled on the primary panel, but you must still keep those three solid items that I keep saying over and over again on that primary, but you can have the informational requirements all with those requirements as well. So cannabinoid content as a percentage, the UID number, the licensed cultivator or the licensee packaging the product with the phone number or website. You've got the date of packaging for retail sale, and you've got the government warning in bold in all caps, and no supplemental labeling here. I will get into, there are two separate government warnings for flower only non-manufactured goods and manufactured goods. And I'll get into that a little bit later because they're two separate ones. So I wanted to provide an example of just like, this is how we're meeting the requirements for flower only pre-roll, primary panel, informational panel. Looking at the primary panel, those three things I'm going to hammer in: the product identity, the universal symbol, and the net weight in customary and metric units, US customary. You can see that those are on that primary panel. The informational panel for these non-manufactured goods has the government warning, which I will go into more later, the packaging date, the UID, the THC and CBD in the percentage, the licensee that packaged or cultivated the goods, and a phone number. They chose a phone number instead of a website because it's either or. And so that is just some examples, just a baseline example of how to meet the requirements. So I'm going to stop right here before I dive into manufacturing and just check in with Maggie and see if there's any questions.
I am not seeing any yet, but just a reminder to everybody on the call, feel free to use the chat or the Q&A feature to type in your questions as Fiona goes through her presentation.
So since there's no questions right now, I'm going to dive into manufactured goods. So we'll start with the primary panel.
Okay, so it looks like we have one question that came in, sorry.
Okay. No worries.
The question is regarding packaging date. Would that be on a variable label?
It can be on a variable data sticker, yes. For flower and for pre-rolls, that can be a yes, but it also depends on where that product is in the stream of things, because at distribution, if it's tested in bulk first, then you would be packaging it after, because you can get that bulk flower COA, then package it, and then you can apply the sticker, versus it's already fully packaged and hasn't been COA'd yet. So it kind of depends on where you are in the stream for that sticker to be applied. I hope that answers the question.
We'll go with that for now, and if they have follow-up questions, type them into the Q&A feature.
Okay, fantastic. So diving into manufactured products, which is a lot more stringent, you've got your primary panel, your manufactured good panel. So like I said, product identity: is it an edible? Is it a vape cartridge? Is it a beverage? What are we making? It's a cookie. Really making clear to the consumer what the product is, because it goes beyond just being flour or a non-infused pre-roll. The universal symbol, the net weight or volume of content, so those customary, US customary again, and metric units, both of them, and the THC and CBD content of the entire package, which can also be listed on the informational panel. So there's a little bit of an option there. So it can be either or. And then we're going into additional requirements for edibles. So you have your cannabis infused. Now, this is going to sound like a lot and I know it seems a little bit nitpicky, but within regulations, when verbiage is put into quotation marks, such as cannabis infused in our regulations, that subset of words must be verbatim. So a common, very minor infraction we see in the industry is people like to leave out the hyphen in cannabis infused, but it has to be verbatim and it has to have that hyphen in it. And it seems that it's a very, very small thing, but that is the reasoning why that has to be in there. And it must be immediately, the wording for an edible must be immediately above the product identity, and it must be in bold and larger font than the product identity. So it must be larger than the word cookie or beverage, for example. And it's the same requirement, the THC and CBD content in each serving, and that can either be on the primary or the informational panel for edibles. So jumping into a little more of the requirements here. So now we're looking at the informational panel for the manufacturer products. So we're looking for the name of the licensed manufacturer, phone number or website of that licensed manufacturer, the date of manufacture and package date. And those dates can be the same date, and you can list them. M/P is something I see, or manufactured this date, packaged on this date if there's two separate dates. The government warning is a different government warning, which I will get into later. In bold, all caps. We're getting into a little bit of the for medical only, and that is if your product exceeds 1,000 milligrams and falls into the medical category, then we're going to want to see for medical use only. It's over 1,000 but less than 2,000 milligrams of THC. All product ingredients in descending order, and that is a very important one. We want to see everything that you use in that product, and we want to see it not just for edibles, we want to see it for vape cartridges. And I understand that it's maybe just ingredients, cannabis oil, and terpenes, but we want to see that listed out on the package, because maybe you didn't add terpenes, a little extra something, but we want to see all the ingredients listed out. Instructions for use. We want to know how to use the product. The consumer wants you to know, like, how do I use this product? Especially someone who's a first-time consumer and they're looking at a vape cartridge like, what do I do? I've never done this before. So it's very important to provide very clear instructions on the different uses of your products. Tinctures, beverages, things like that. We want to know, maybe 2 drops for a tincture. Get really specific to help the consumer know what they're consuming. The expiration, oh no.
You're good.
I'm good,
I
okay.
think your internet glitched for just a second, but you're good now.
It did. Oh, whew. Okay. And then a cat joined and okay. Back on track. So the expiration date, use, and best by date, if applicable. So those are if applicable to your product. And some ways of determining those dates include shelf stability testing. So some people will make their product and put it on a shelf and, check a year later and say, oh, it's still good. Check maybe a couple months later, still good. And so as people make their products, that is one way of determining whether or not you have, a solid expiration best by date. And so that's if applicable to your product. And then, of course, you've got to have your UID and your batch number. And then moving into the additional requirements for edibles, We definitely want to know if there's allergens, tree nuts, milk, eggs. Please list those on there. Any artificial coloring. And we're going to want that nutritional piece. So sodium, how much sodium, sugar, carbohydrates, and total fat per serving in grams is in your product. So those are for edible specific requirements only. So touching on the supplemental piece a little bit more, and there's some examples on the slide of the, you can see them with like Tylenol bottles, usually that long little piece you can open up and see like all of the nutritional facts or, you know, medical facts or, you know, different types of warnings. And so this can be used for manufactured products only. And this can be you can fulfill all the requirements using that except for the UID and batch number. That has to be explicit and it has to be on like facing outward. And so, yeah, like on the slide, there's some examples, there's hanging tags, there's peel labels, and there's paper inserts. So that's just some of the other options, especially maybe on a smaller bottle, such as a tincture, that you can meet those requirements. And so getting into some examples here. So this is an edible example. It has the cannabis infused, don't forget that hyphen, and a larger font, bigger than the product identity, which is the brownie bite. You've got your universal symbol, and you have your net weight in both US customary and metric units. And so that is meeting the requirements for that edible for the primary panel. And then you have your informational panel, which dives a little bit deeper. And it has all those things we kind of talked about. You know, we want to know your serving size, your sodiums, your sugars, your ingredients. Oh, look, it contains allergens, your eggs, your milk, your soybeans, has your government warning. You know, this one even has a refrigerate after opening, which is another requirement if that product is necessary to be refrigerated after opening. And it touches on some other things, the manufacturer. This one provides the website and phone number, even though you can provide either or, this packaging provides both. So this is just one example of a manufactured good as an edible and how the label, you know, looks. And so just touching on just a general manufactured product. So in this example, we're looking at capsules. And so this doesn't need that cannabis infused piece. Excuse me. And excuse me. Oh, right. It doesn't need that. Yeah, it doesn't need the cannabis infused piece.
You want to take a moment?
Excuse me. I don't know what happened there. Too much talking. Oh, I think I'm better. Thanks, Mackie.
No worries. I'll take a moment to just remind folks, feel free as Fiona's presenting to type in questions that you have for her in the Q&A feature, and we will make sure to get to all of those.
Thank you. Okay. So getting back into the cannabis infused piece. So it doesn't need that because it's a manufactured product that is not an edible. So capsules, we're looking at that as just as a concentrate here. So this has the cannabinoid content labeled on the front, universal symbol, net weight. On the informational panel, it has the instructions for use, the ingredients. So we definitely want to see those. And even though these ingredients, it's just a short list, we want to know that, you know, what it contains. Government warning, manufacturing packaging date, UID, batch number, and this one has the manufacturer, but it only has the website. So just pointing out some of those for another example, capsule and concentrate. And so before I go into more specifics about the universal symbol, does anyone have any questions about the manufactured product labeling piece?
There is a question about if the question was posed to me sort of if there is multiple packaged products within a larger packaging. So if I guess if there was sort of a master package that had individually wrapped servings inside of it, if the packaging needs to be the same for the individual servings as in that master package. Oh, did we lose you? Her internet might have just frozen on us, folks. So let's just give it a moment here. She warned me this might happen. And I'll just take a moment here while she gets back on and remind everybody that this session is being recorded, just like all of the Alliance's Get Legit education series. If you have missed any of our recent education, whether it's on pesticide use and safety to ACPs and all of the permitting requirements, we have those available. Reach out to us anytime if you need that assistance. Hello again, Fiona.
I'm so sorry. I told you this.
No worries. I was
you.
prepared because you warned me.
Thank you. I apologize for that. But please finish.
Oh no, yeah, feel free to get your screen share back up. Yeah, so folks, reach out to us here at the Alliance anytime. I'll put our contact information into the chat feature here for those of you who don't have it. And just as a reminder, any and all questions are on the table here while we have Fiona with us today. It's not every day we have access to somebody at CDPH, and so take this opportunity to ask questions that you have, and you can type them into the Q&A feature and we will get to them.
Especially apologize for that.
No worries.
I think I'm sharing the correct.
Yep, you're back up.
Okay, great.
So the question, when it froze, the question had been if I guess it's two-part. It's if you can do this, and if so if there's like a master package that the individual doses inside of it are also individually packaged. And if you can do that, if the labels on the individual doses need to be the same as the master package that they all come in.
Let me write that down and get back to you because I believe I have the answer, but I want to make sure I have the answer because there's a little stipulation with individually wrapped items.
Cool.
So I just want to, I'll get back to you and then you can get back to that
That's
member
great.
or person because there's a little bit of a stipulation there.
Great, thank you.
Is there any other questions?
I'm not seeing any at the moment, but feel free to speak up, guys, and we'll just continue going.
Oopsie. There we go. So we're looking at the primary panel, not primary panel, universal symbol. So the universal symbol is, it has to be on the primary panel. It has to be black in color. It has to be bold. And the universal symbol can be no smaller than 0.5 or half an inch by half an inch. And so it can be bigger than that, but that is what the requirements surrounding the universal symbol are. The symbol can't be altered or cropped in any other way than to adjust for the placement. And so here are some examples of compliant examples. And so you can see that even on a black background, it can be outlined. That is allowed. So you can have that outlining piece on there, highlighted, if you will. We don't want to see it in other colors, pink, metallic pink, red. Just it has to be in black, and you can highlight it, and it has to be half an inch by half an inch. So moving on to the universal symbol for um, vaping products. So this was a modified requirement. Um, so Assembly Bill 1529 modified this labeling requirement exclusively for vape cartridges and inhalable products. This is really focusing in on inhalable products. And so you can engrave or affix the vape cartridge, the vape cartridge itself with the universal symbol. It can be black or white in color, and it could be no smaller than 1/4 inch by 1/4 inch. So it can be smaller for the internal packaging on the vape cartridge or inhalable product. So so inhalable product is what we're focusing in on here.
There is a question relative to the symbol itself.
Okay.
Somebody wants to know, where can they go to download that symbol?
Oh, so it's on our website. I can provide, Maggie, I'll provide you with the specific location of where you can download that. And I believe we offer it in different, what would you call it, like PDF and like JPEG. We offer it in different formats. So I can give you that information and that can be passed on.
Great, thank you.
Just write that down. So let's see. So the government warning is a big one. This is a really common violation we usually see because there are 2 government warnings in our regulations and they are kind of back to back. And so I really wanted to take this time and show you all this slide and show you the differences. So when I pick up, as an inspector, when I pick up a product and it's like a flower product or a flower only product and it says the intoxicating effects of cannabis products may be delayed up to 2 hours, I immediately know it's the incorrect government warning for that product type. And that's usually the dead giveaway. So you want to have that intoxicating effect of cannabis product, that piece is only for manufactured products. And so you can see the difference between, this package versus this product. So I really wanted to highlight that in this presentation because it's a common thing that people think there's only one government warning and they're really surprised when they're like, oh, there's 2 government warnings. So I really wanted to highlight that. And then we're going to get into some labeling restrictions. So the name of a county, unless 100% of the cannabis contained in the product was grown in that county. So if you're claiming a county, prestigious county perhaps, that grows beautiful cannabis flower, and we as inspectors actually can go and track and trace and look back to see where that cannabis came from and to see if it truly was grown in that county if you were going to make a claim. So do not make a claim for a product, the cannabis in that product, or just flower grown pre-rolls, unless it truly did come from that county. Content that is attractive to children. So we do not want to see cartoons, images, characters, or phrases popularly used to advertise to children, imitation of candy packaging or labeling, and a variety of the word candies. Candies with a Z, candies with a K, so we don't want to see anything like that. False or misleading information, so nothing that will lead the public on that, this product can do all of these magical things when it really can't. So no false and misleading information. Making sure it's true. Health-related statements. We don't want to see health-related statements that are making claims such as this product cures cancer. We don't want to see that. A picture of the product, and this is exclusive to edibles only. So the product, such as like a cookie, and even though we understand it's an opaque packaging, so of course, like, you kind of want to see what the product looks like, but you can't have an actual photo or the image of the product on the outside of the opaque packaging. And the use of the word organic or variants of the word organic. Those are regulated terms, which we can get into a little bit more. And so now we're going to touch on some common labeling violations. Misuse, I touched on this earlier, misuse of the universal symbol. The universal symbol needs to be in black. It needs to be at least 0. or half an inch by half an inch. And that is for the primary panel of non-manufactured and manufactured goods. We've learned throughout this presentation that there are stipulations for inhalable products when we're looking at the most interior packaging of that vape pen or inhalable, dabbable item with the jar, things like that. Incorrect government warning, touched on how there's 2 different warnings, so making sure you have the right one for your product type. Not listing both units. So sometimes we see people listing one over the other, but making sure both units for the product weight are on the primary panel in both US customary and metric. Missing instructions for use is a common one. We want to know how to use the product. The consumer wants you to know. You want to know, the consumer wants to know, how do I use this? Missing ingredients, missing the name of the manufacturer, and the use of the word organic. So cannabis product labeling cannot contain false or misleading information. And false or misleading information includes any indication that the cannabis or cannabis product is organic. And it is because organic is a designated term, and it's based on certification. And at this time, the USDA makes that determination, and still on the federal level, it is a Schedule I drug. So the use of the word organic cannot be on cannabis products in California at this time. So that is something we see still.
We have a question specific to that. It is for ingredients listed. If the word organic can be used, say, if you have a salve and it includes organic shea butter.
Unfortunately, at this time, no, that cannot be included in the ingredients because it is a regulated term, and it is a very common question we get asked. And we understand that you did use the organic sugar and butter, things like that. But because of how there's no verification in place right now to verify that you truly use those products, and because it is a regulated term by the USDA, you cannot do that at this time. But hopefully, moving forward with the OCal program developing, there'll be certain regulations in place for California that certain type of verbiage may be allowed. So there are things coming out that will hopefully allow for some sort of verbiage out there. Are there any other questions right now?
There was just a follow-up statement to that question about organic ingredients, saying that it's in the batch production record and so can be traced.
Unfortunately, I understand that, and that's a great best manufacturing practice, but it has to do with the labeling, and that's what we're looking at right now.
Great. I think that's all the questions for the moment.
I think, yep. So this is just the last slide, and we can jump into a Q&A, but, and don't feel the need to write down all these URLs. I'm gonna send Maggie this so that she can disperse it to the Alliance. But these are some of the guidance documents we offer to the industry on our website, and I highly recommend using them. They're great checklists from your packaging all the way through your primary panel to your informational label, child-resistant guidance documents, and then they're beautiful checklists that really break down the regulations and can help you making sure your packaging is fully compliant and ready for retail sale. So don't stress about writing them down. I'm going to send it out to Maggie so she definitely has it. But this concludes the presentation on packaging and labeling. I'm more than happy to take any questions, anything else that is going on, more than happy to answer for everyone.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Fiona. That was great.
Of course.
So folks, as she said, feel free to type in any questions into the chat or Q&A. I know we have a lot of very knowledgeable people actually attending on the call, and I won't call you all out by name, but if there are things that you see or experience in the industry that you think other people on the call might benefit from hearing about, whether it's common errors or things that you think work well in packaging and labeling, now would be a great time to share thoughts and questions. We've got one here that asks, are the Prop 65 requirements not part of this regulation conversation, or where do those fit in?
Okay, so Prop 65 is actually not one of our requirements. So Prop 65 is required by Prop 65. It's required by another agency. And I can get you some more specific information, Maggie, to disperse. But basically, it's a proposition and it's a different entity that requires that information on there. So you're not just dealing with us, you're dealing with Prop 65. And I know there's new information coming out, especially since I believe they've updated it recently, and there's more requirements surrounding that. So I can get Maggie some information that can maybe help the alliance and like specify that a little bit more from that agency that regulates that terminology.
For people who are planning their label designs and so forth, do you recommend that the Prop 65 things, in those different panels that you described, would that go into one of those specific panels, or is this just totally separate somewhere on the packaging?
So I don't want to speak for that agency, but I can tell you from a common practice, it's usually on the informational panel somewhere. Because even if you go and you look at I'm trying to think of something that requires Prop 65, but if you can think of a product that requires that proposition, and it's required for a lot of, I think alcohol and things. If you go and look and kind of take the cannabis, like this is your primary panel, and then this is your informational panel. I think I see someone that says toothpaste. And look where that's placed, you can kind of think about that for your product and how it would look on your product. So that's kind of what I would suggest doing.
Cool. I'm laughing at this next question, but it says, you mentioned Prop 65 is a different agency. How many different agency requirements are there that we should be aware of?
For packaging and labeling, I think it's just us and that specific piece that I am aware of at this time. So that is a great question.
There's a lot of different agencies in the cannabis supply chain. Well, there's not a lot. There's really three main ones, and they're actually potentially in the process of consolidating to one. And so your number of agencies will reduce. We have another question. It says, if our farm gets certified kind, and actually this question would apply to any third-party certifications, can that be put on the label?
There are no prohibitions against that type of labeling.
Great. Next question is, does batch info /UID/potency need to be on the internal packaging if the external packaging already has it listed?
No.
It's convenient.
That's an easy one.
Yeah. Great questions, folks. Keep them coming. I know that there was some questions we had locally. There's always confusion here in Nevada County, which is in the Sierra foothills, and there is a Sierra County about that people maybe, I think, kind of overthink it, but also it just gets a little tangled in people's minds, that regulation about use of county name.
Yeah, so that goes back to kind of what I spoke to earlier about where the cannabis came from. So if you're making a claim that it's come from a specific county, Nevada County in this case, all that cannabis or the cannabis in that product needs to have come from that county. And so I think that's what we're trying. The question that we're trying to answer here is that 100% of it has to be from that specific county. If we're talking about a specific area, that's a little different because our regulations speak to the county piece.
Yeah, people here I think get tangled up in it because a lot of people use the word Sierra in
Mm.
their product names or their business names and so forth, and whether that's considered marketing that even though they're not in Sierra County.
Oh, okay.
And
Um,
is that actually a conflict if it's in their business name? It's
I don't think it's a conflict if it's very situation dependent and it depends on how you're making the claim. Um, but if it's in the business name, I don't think it's an issue because it's the business name. But it all depends on like what claim are you trying to make here? Is this 100%
sure.
Sierra grown? Then maybe we're walking, and it's not all 100%. Then maybe we're walking a little bit on the maybe we shouldn't be using that. But I would have to see it. It's very situation dependent, case by case.
Here's another question of, do you review or do you offer review of labels before they go to print?
Um, not necessarily if somebody is, they're like, hey, does this look, especially in inspections, we'll look at the packaging and labeling and say, yes, you're more than welcome to send it to our inbox. And be like, we get a lot of questions like, is my packaging attractive to children? And our department will make that determination before it goes out, things like that. So that's also a case by case. I'm more than happy to take a peek at things if they happen to come my way and just make sure you're meeting those requirements real quick. But it's nothing, there's no formal kind of way to go about it, unfortunately.
Great. Next question is, someone mentioned a variable label. Is a variable label the same as a supplemental label?
So when we talk about, so that's a really good question. So in a sense, it could be. When we a lot of I think that's terminology I've picked up from the industry is they call it the variable data label, and it's the labeling that is placed on the packaging that always changes. So some of the stuff, like say, let's just take a topical, for example, a salve. You'll have the name, the universal symbol, the weight, the things that really never change, the government warning, but then you've got things that do change, such as the manufacturing date or the packaging date, the UID, the batch number. So when I say variable label, that's usually what I'm speaking to is that variable data label piece. And so so of those things I've mentioned, the only things that can't be on those labels are the UID and batch number. It's for the supplemental piece, if we want to use a supplemental. Variable is usually those things that always change is what I was referencing.
Great. If there are more questions, now is the time, folks. Shout them out while we have Fiona here. Take advantage of her time with us this evening. I also will just remind folks that while we're on this subject of packaging and making labels and so forth, that on June 23rd, we are having an industry affairs call on cannabis marketing and various things of that nature and what that looks like, and different types of marketing that are working in the cannabis industry that sort of goes hands in hand with this. Also, this has been recorded, and so it will be available for reference after this is over. Let's see, looks like we've got a couple other questions here. Few compliments. Thank you, Fiona, for this. Very informative. So testing labs are all over the place. I can test a topical or tincture potency and get wildly different results by the same lab. Is there a standardized test for potency? Is this something that CDPH regulates or the BCC?
Well, thank you for that question. Unfortunately, that is out of my purview and CDPH's at this time, but that's great feedback, and that's something we're going to want to hear with, if consolidation goes through and the budget is signed. That's the type of feedback we do want to hear and keep hearing so we can have consistency across the board. So I do not have, unfortunately, a specific answer at this time, but that is great feedback to hear, and we're always welcome to that type of thing and are looking forward to that.
Yeah, I'll just add to that. It's the BCC that oversees testing labs themselves as businesses. And I think we all would second and third the suggestion to create standardization in the testing industry, because it is wildly variable. And yeah, so just follow-up comment on that. I don't know how anybody can label their potency prior to COA. And thanks for taking that comment. Yes, testing standardization would be lovely.
Well, if consolidation signs off, then,
I know that it's recommendations that the state has received on many different occasions.
Yes, exactly. And it's one of the things that is definitely known from the industry, and we definitely hear that and receive that comment.
Yeah. So if folks have other questions, now is the time. Oh, I don't know what just happened here. Okay. If that's, yeah, I'll give folks another minute or so. If you guys have additional questions while we have Fiona here, please shout them out and by typing them out. And I will just, the CDPH manufactured cannabis branch has their own website. It is full of information. It's full of the logo or the signage and the logos that you need for your packaging and labeling. And I will just reiterate, folks should reach out if they have follow-up questions. Here is another question for you, Fiona. How do we label a product from multiple harvests? Do we use one date?
So it's packaged for retail sale. So the date it's packaged for retail sale. So if you've combined all your harvested and your package, it's that date for retail sale.
Great. If anybody else has questions, give it another couple minutes, see if any trickle in. And I will just, for those, the one thing I have not mentioned that I want everybody here in Nevada County to know is that next week on June 2nd, the county cannabis compliance department is hosting a listening session with Ubinet. This will be a similar format to what we're doing here tonight. They are looking for input on cannabis licensing types and canopy expansion. It is very important that you all participate and contribute and just speak up. They have a survey out if you can't attend on June 2nd. It's from 5 to 6 p.m. You can find information in the Alliance newsletters, on the county website, on our social media pages. So check out that. Please tune in and add your voice to that if you can next week. And if you cannot attend, please fill out their survey so they hear from as many people as possible. With that, I don't see any more questions coming in. And so I want to thank you, Fiona, so much for your time. And thank you all for attending this evening. Fiona, we will be in touch. And for everybody on the call, thank you so much. Please reach out to us here at the Alliance. If you are not a member yet, please consider becoming one. We are truly stronger together. and we want to see everybody be successful. And so hopefully this was helpful. Reach out if you'd like the recording. And Fiona, thank you so much again. We look forward to seeing you soon, hopefully next time in person, and appreciate all that you're doing for everybody.
Of course, I always enjoy presenting to the Alliance, so thank you for having me, everyone.
Awesome. Have a good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone.